Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's meeting for the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley. My name is Tzviatko Shirov, and I'm the president of this Rotary Club for this Rotary year. And I'm excited for the program that we have for you today. We have quite a few members of our club joining us, which I'm going to introduce at towards the beginning of the Q&A. But what I'd like to do now is just tell you a bit about our speaker, Cal Mann. So Cal Mann is a Rotarian, and he's also a Peace Corps volunteer. And he's currently serving in North Macedonia, and he's going to be telling us a little bit about his experience in that Peace Corps journey during the past couple years or so. And Cal has been working on identifying some opportunities for collaboration between Rotary and the Peace Corps, which I'm very curious to learn a bit more about. Cal is originally from Washington State, so not very far from where most of our Rotary Club members are located. He has two sons who are recent college graduates, and he's somewhat relatively retired, according to him, from a career in merchandising consulting. And he's worked with some major brands like Tylenol, Pepsi, Frito-Lay, Starbucks, and many others throughout his career. So with that, I will pass it over to Cal. Cal, take it away.
Great, thank you. It's really nice to be on here. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen and switch over to my presentation. So hopefully this will work. It did during the test, so let's see if we can make it happen. So if it is working right, you should be able to see a slide that says Rotary Peace Corps Partnership. Tzviatko, can you get a thumbs up? That tells me that you can see it. So as Tzviatko said, I am a Peace Corps volunteer. I'm also a Rotarian. I've been a Rotarian for about 15 years in Southern California and then in Northern California, most recently with the Oakland Rotary, the big club there in Oakland. And I've been a Peace Corps volunteer here in North Macedonia for the last 18 months or so, since September of 2017, so coming up on 2 years. For those of you who don't know where North Macedonia is, here's a helpful little map. Recently renamed. It is part of the former Yugoslavia, and a very interesting place. I wish I had time to give you the tourism pitch, but I would just say look it up and see what the opportunities are. It's a fantastic place to visit. I know that at very least Cecilia has a good idea what Peace Corps is, but I thought it'd be helpful just for those who are watching who maybe are not as familiar. I'm just going to give you kind of a top line on Peace Corps so you know what it is. It is a U.S. Department agency. It's been around since Kennedy first created it. In any given year, there's a little over 7,000 volunteers around the world who are serving in Peace Corps. And currently, we're in 61 countries. They just added a country a few weeks ago, and I don't know which one it is. I don't think I knew where it was before they told me that they added it anyway. Probably the most important thing is to understand that it is a very mission-driven organization. And as the name suggests, its mission is to create peace and brotherhood around the world. And I think the key thing is that it's a very grassroots organization. It's obviously very large and is a large government bureaucracy, but its effectiveness is resulting from the fact that it's a very grassroots organization. That's going to be important to remember as we talk a little bit later about the partnership with Rotary. Currently here in North Macedonia, Peace Corps has 90 volunteers. We are located in about 50 different communities, and it is one of the most desirable countries to be a Peace Corps volunteer. It's very competitive to get here. Obviously, their vetting process is not that good because they chose me. But other than that, everyone else is excellent. This is what a typical Peace Corps volunteer looks like. The majority of them, I'm going to say about a little over 90%, are in their 20s and 30s. And then the other 10% is people like me who are somewhere north of their 20s and 30s. We have 3 different sectors here in Macedonia. The largest block is teaching English. They teach English in public schools here. They are not only teaching English to students, but they're also teaching the English teachers how to teach English better using best practices. And they obviously have an advantage that they're speaking with a native English-speaking accent. We also have what's called special needs. This is kind of a pilot test, only in a few countries, where we have about 20 volunteers who are experts in special needs. And they are working with the local special needs centers, that is daycare, sort of a daycare center for special needs people around the country, as well as working with the Ministry of Education on developing their curriculum and their capacity for special needs teachers. And then finally, there's a sector called community development. That's the one that I'm in, and that's a very broad kind of category or sector. That can be anything from working with the local YMCA, helping them develop their programs, to working with Boy Scouts. Many of us are working for small NGOs. And so that's got a pretty broad footprint, and there's a good third of our volunteers are in that sector. So now I want to talk a little bit about the partnership between Peace Corps and Rotary. There is, if you didn't already know, there is an official relationship between Peace Corps and Rotary. It goes back to 2015. It was a 3-year agreement that was going to expire a year ago in May, but it was extended for another 3 years. So there is this top-to-top, what's called a memorandum of understanding between Peace Corps headquarters and Rotary International in Chicago. However, there isn't a huge amount of direction as to what that partnership means for Peace Corps volunteers or for Rotary clubs. So being a Rotarian, I've taken the license to kind of make it up as I go along. So I'll tell you a little bit about how it looks here, and then you can maybe do some research on your own to find out other places where maybe it's being done differently. What we did after some discussions and some thought about how to make the partnership real here, we decided that we would sign a similar memorandum of understanding between Peace Corps of Macedonia and the Association of Rotary Clubs of Macedonia. So that was accomplished in November, last November. And that kind of gave license to the clubs underneath and to the volunteers under Peace Corps to work together and collaborate and to make something out of this partnership. So on the left is the Peace Corps country director, that's Mark. And on the right is the district governor from District 1912, which oddly is comprised of North Macedonia and Slovakia. And you don't have to look at the map, I'll tell you, we're not contiguous. So there's a whole history behind it. I'm not going to go into it, but that's where our district is. So we have what's called the Association of Rotary Clubs of North Macedonia. And the gentleman in the middle, his name is Zoran, and he was the coordinator for the association, and he just relinquished his title on July 1st. These are the areas where we have activity, either Peace Corps or Rotary around the country. And we've identified there are 12 communities that we're going to focus on that have both Peace Corps and Rotary. So that's where we're going to try to make the activities happen. Because I'm located in a community that has a Rotary club, it's called the Rotary Club of Stiep, we decided that it would be good to try to push the test here, since I'm a Rotarian and a Peace Corps volunteer, I have sort of the advantage of momentum. And so I reached out to my Rotary Club back in Southern California. I've also recently reached out to the club in Oakland and have started to do pilot projects here involving Rotary clubs, Peace Corps volunteers, and also what's called GLOW YMLP. And then when you hear GLOW YMLP, I just want you to think Interact Club. It is a high school community service club that has been developed here. They also have camps that happen in the summer that are identical to the way that RILA camps are run in your area and other places around the world. So the test is to see if we can get these various partners to work together. And we've been able to show that that is possible. It started with a cleanup project that the local Rotary Club had. And on the far right is one of the volunteers from the GLOW YMLP Club. And then the next to her is yours truly. So this was the beginning of the collaboration. It was a short, easy project. We had a lot of fun, and we proved that it was possible to work together. As a next example, we found out that a couple of the local schools needed books in English, and also a local library needed books in English. So we collaborated with the club in La Jolla, and we got funding from them and funding from the local Rotary Club. And we were able to purchase books. That was coordinated by the Rotary Club of Steep to find a supplier of books, select those books, and get them shipped into us. And we gave them to 2 different schools for their English teaching program. We also gave it to the local library. And those books in the local library you'll see are being used here. The volunteer on the far left and the far right are both members of the GLOW YMLP Club. The books are supplied by a collaboration of Rotary clubs, and the children in the middle are learning English by being read books. So you can see the synergy that's happening here. The high school kids could not have afforded to purchase the books on their own, and the Rotarians may not have the English speaking skills or the time to be spending their Saturdays volunteering reading to the kids. So it's actually a really nice plus for everyone. Another bigger project has gotten more ambitious is that we have gotten money to do a rehabilitation of a music practice room at a local music high school. We started with 1 room. That was successful. We got some good press. The local municipality got involved. They rehabilitated a bathroom at the school that was not usable. And then we used it to create a concert. So the kids from the school performed in a concert that was organized and sponsored by the Steep Rotary Club. There were 600 tickets sold and a packed house. And it raised enough money to rehabilitate 3 more rooms. So the seed money that came from one Rotary Club allowed us to rehabilitate this room. And I see that Mitko has just logged on. He is the president of the Rotary Club of Steep. So you all can make a virtual wave to him. He's responsible for coordinating everything that had to happen in the local community. My language skills are limited, and it would never have happened without his coordination. Another activity we were able to do together was to support a project that the local Rotary Club has had the last 2 years, which is collecting food for needy families. And we got Peace Corps volunteers and the GLOW YMLP volunteers to help out, able to have a lot more presence in the local stores. The volunteers also got to go to the local community where we delivered the food to the needy families. So it was a really good experience for everyone involved. As I go around and talk to Rotary clubs here, I talk about what the opportunity is for them. They have the opportunity to collaborate with Peace Corps volunteers. under the auspices of this partnership. It can allow them to help with projects and events, and it can help them do what they're here to do, which is to help their community. The Rotary clubs also have the opportunity to host a Peace Corps volunteer in their home. This provides their family with a really good cultural experience, opportunity if they have children for them to learn English a little bit better, to be exposed to another culture without leaving the comfort of their own home. And it obviously makes the Peace Corps volunteers' experience much richer by actually living with the family rather than being off on their own. And finally, the test has gone well enough that Peace Corps has agreed for the next group of volunteers who will be arriving in September that they will actually assign a Peace Corps volunteer to work directly with a Rotary club in Macedonia to help them to grow their club, to help them connect with U.S. Rotary clubs, to help them develop their role in their community. And obviously that'll be helpful for the volunteer too, because the Rotary clubs are so well connected to their community already. For US-based Rotary clubs, and frankly for Rotary clubs anywhere outside of Macedonia, the relationship with Peace Corps provides them with similar opportunity to help Peace Corps volunteers wherever they're serving. I would also encourage Rotary clubs to invite Peace Corps volunteers to come as a guest speaker. There are a ton of past Peace Corps volunteers in the Bay Area, and there's also probably quite a few of them, volunteers who have been invited to serve, who are in the process of getting ready to go. Might be interesting to have one of them come on and talk about their ambition and their interest in becoming a Peace Corps volunteer, and maybe talk about how you might collaborate in the country that they're going to. You also have the opportunity, you can collaborate with Returned Peace Corps volunteers, and one of the areas of collaboration that I'm really interested in from a Rotary point of view is that Returned Peace Corps volunteers, to me, seem like they are really prime candidates for bringing into the family of Rotary, whether it's through Rotaract or getting involved maybe as a mentor for your Interact club, or actually joining Rotary as a full-fledged member. This is an area that I feel like has tremendous potential that I look forward to working on from now till the end of time. For Rotary International, this is for anybody who's from Rotary International who happens to be watching here. I think this initiative and the partnership between Peace Corps has the opportunity to really increase the effectiveness of clubs worldwide. This partnership can really help clubs develop locally in developing countries, and it can also help clubs that are already developed in their international project efforts. It can, I think, help it increase the effectiveness of global grants by having those local Rotary clubs and having the Peace Corps volunteers solidify the action of their global grant projects. And again, engaging Peace Corps volunteers and Returned Peace Corps volunteers, they're prime prospects for Rotaract and Rotary Club membership. I'm going to leave you this formal presentation with an image that I picked up off of a recent announcement about gravitational waves. I don't know anything about gravitational waves, but I think the idea of Peace Corps and Rotary together, that we may be at the beginning of something that could create really big waves out across, maybe not across time and space, but certainly around the Rotary world. I invite you all to join the collaboration. We're having a fantastic time here. The Rotary and Peace Corps partnership here in Macedonia has been a plus for everyone who's been involved. And I really encourage you all to explore the potential that it offers. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions and answers, and hopefully I haven't burned up too much time.
Thanks so much, Cal. This is really awesome. Can you stop sharing your screen so we can pull up our pictures here instead?
Yeah.
So go ahead and stop sharing there.
Perfect.
All right, awesome. Thanks again for this such an amazing presentation. It was so good to hear about both the way that the Peace Corps operates in North Macedonia, but also what you've been able to achieve and kind of spearheading that, building that relationship between Rotary and the Peace Corps, which seems so natural. So before we move into the Q&A, I'd like to introduce the folks that we have here on the call with us. We have Roger, who's one of our members from Canada. He's from British Columbia. Thanks, Roger. We have Nate just under him there. So Nate is normally based in Japan, but he's currently visiting family, I think, in Canada. We have our member Cecilia, who is also a Peace Corps volunteer, and she's currently in Ethiopia. So hi, Cecilia. Thank you so much for tuning in. She's joining us in the evening time there under a bed net. So thank you for that. I think that the gentleman that's here, Cal, you said his name was Mitko. Is that right?
Mitko, yeah.
Meet you here.
You can hey, here's Mitko.
Hi, Mitko. How are you?
Hi, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us as well. Such a good crowd over here. So before I go to my questions, let me just open it up to see if there's any others from the other members on the call. No? Okay, cool. So Nate, go ahead.
Sorry, I just had to unmute there. I've got a few questions, but I'll just kind of start with one, if that's all right, and then pass it off. Thank you for the presentation first. That was great. I've heard about the Peace Corps, read a little bit, but getting a little more insight into the different things that you're doing and the different branches of it, fabulous stuff. So for me, I'm a teacher. So I'm kind of curious about the teaching thing. So great work that these young people in their 20s are doing. I am curious, for those volunteers that go to teach English, do they get some kind of training? I'm sure you have some qualified teachers that volunteer to go, but I'm kind of curious how that would work.
I haven't actually segmented what the teacher volunteer population is, but I'm gonna hazard to say that about 2/3 of them are credentialed teachers with experience.
Wow, very cool.
The balance of them have other experience sufficient to have qualified them to teach English. And then the first 3 months they're here, they get very intensive training in how to teach English as a second language. Mm-hmm. There is some kind of a test that they take, but I because I'm not in that sector, I don't know as much about it as I should. But it's a good question. Yes.
I probably can answer that question. So the Peace Corps, and sorry for not being on the video, but I'm saving it here. The Peace Corps has 2 English teacher programs. The majority of them are in a program where they are trained both how to teach and in the local language. Although we all teach in English, in Ethiopia, the high schools actually are supposed to teach all their classes in English, even though it doesn't happen completely. But I'm actually part of a program, a TEFL program, which is teaching English as a foreign language, that only happens in the Peace Corps in Ecuador, Ethiopia, and Indonesia. And so when I come out of at the end of 2 years, I will have a TEFL certification. I can't remember the certifying agency, but that will basically it's recognized by the Department of Defense and the State Department. So, for example, I could possibly participate in the State Department's, what do they call it, English Teaching Fellows Program, and have them send me here and there for 10 months at a time to teach English. So I think the Peace Corps realized they needed to offer people something that would help them in their eventual careers.
Right, right.
So they started, and that was my interest in coming to Ethiopia, was to be able to participate in that program.
Makes sense. Thank you, both.
Sure.
Very cool, awesome. So Cal, tell us a little bit about this partnership that you kind of started building there in North Macedonia between Rotary and the Rotary clubs and Peace Corps volunteers. Is that has that been implemented anywhere else, as far as you're aware? Are you using this sort of as a testing ground to show just the amazing projects, some of the pictures that you showed us today, and the very impactful projects that both Rotarians and Peace Corps volunteers have been a part of? Is that sort of meant to be kind of as a testing ground to prove the concept that more of that should be happening?
I would say kind of no and yes, because there is this existing partnership at the headquarters level between Peace Corps, and it's been in existence for 3 years or 4 years now. But in my research, I couldn't really find a whole lot of activity that had been documented. And there was no supporting documents or training or anything about it from the Peace Corps side, nor from the Rotary side. And I have been in contact with headquarters, and I have heard, and I have now seen that there is some documents that are basically trying to provide the Rotary clubs to suggest how they might interact with Peace Corps volunteers. But to my knowledge, Peace Corps hasn't developed anything that has said how to work with a Rotary club. So in the absence of direction, I decided to just make it up on my own as I went along. And Mitko he's looking sanguine there, but he's been the brunt of my endless efforts to try this and try that, and let's do this and let's do that, and what about this and what about that. And he's tremendously patient with me, because the sort of American high-speed work from a calendar, be hyper-organized, I don't think is as prevalent here, let's just say. And so it's been probably kind of eye-opening for him to see how kind of crazy Americans treat Rotary. But it's been fantastic, and I've met a tremendous amount of really nice Rotarians, and I feel like there's really a lot of potential here. We've barely scratched the surface of the potential, and I don't know everything else that's going on. As far as I know, Cecilia is the only other person that I know that's both a Rotarian and a currently serving Peace Corps volunteer. I'm sure there are more out there. I just don't have any way of knowing how to reach them or collaborate with them or share learnings or best practice learnings. So your initiative in having this online meeting and the possibility for it being shared, I'm hopeful will help spread the word. And I'm certainly welcome anybody who's interested in contacting me to talk about how they could facilitate that, whether it is a Peace Corps volunteer who's currently serving, whether it's a returned Peace Corps volunteer who would like to reconnect with the country that they were in and connect through a Rotary club back in their country of service, or if it's a Rotary club in the US or some other country that would like to do projects in a developing country that has a Rotary club. And there are a lot of them. At some point, I'm going to sit down and figure out what is the overlap there, but I think it's probably pretty high.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. And by the way, there is at least one other Rotarian besides the two of us who are Peace Corps volunteers. One of them is in my cohort here in Ethiopia. in the education program with me. And so he's a young guy. There are a couple of our group who are Rotaractors, so it's logical that they would come into the Peace Corps, and because the missions are so closely related to each other. And so I haven't, well, as you know, Cal, the first 3 months are very intense in terms of all the training and everything, and our movements are highly restricted, but I have been managing to make contacts here in Ethiopia with the various clubs, including the country officer for the polio eradication program, because I think our Peace Corps volunteers would find that to be a tremendous experience. And just today, I met our country director for the first time, and he has been invited to at least attend a meeting at the Rotary Club in the capital. So he was excited to know that I'm involved, and we're gonna try to work a little more closely to, you know, make a connection with the main, well, with any Rotary Club here, and see just how we can have a collaboration, because the Peace Corps, it's really not on their radar. And you probably have read the Peace Corps policy manual, but which says no outside money. We don't want money coming from outside organizations, only from NGOs that are in the country. But he believes that there should be a collaboration. So we'll work on making some inroads there.
Right. That actually, the memorandum of understanding that we have between Rotary Clubs of Macedonia and Peace Corps Macedonia does give us some flexibility on that policy that you mentioned.
Yeah. Well, and even the Peace Corps in some areas is starting to look at that. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some changes in that regard.
Yeah.
And
I think it's
the way you do Rotary grants, you can fly under the radar with that. So
guys, I think we're running out of time here. Those of us on the call can remain on afterwards to continue our discussion and additional comments. Roger, if you have a very quick one, go ahead and unmute yourself. We're running a little out of time, so go ahead.
In Rotary, we have the foundation. If you wanted to do a water project, Cal, does the Peace Corps have any source of funding from government or otherwise to assist in the project?
I would not, my instinct would be not to go to the government here. Personally, I don't have enough knowledge of it, and I don't have any contacts within the various ministries for doing that. There is no Rotary Foundation within the country. As far as I know, most of the clubs here do not have a foundation. It's something that Mitko and I have talked about just conceptually, that his club is new. It was only 6 months new when I joined it. So obviously it's a little early to be talking about building a corpus and a foundation. But to my knowledge, from talking with Rotarians around the country, none of the clubs have a foundation. I think that's probably true in other countries that are, in a similar economic, in a similar economic condition.
Thanks, Roger, for the question. Thanks, Cal, for taking care of this. So with that, I'd like to wrap us up over here. So those of us again on the call, let's remain afterwards to continue this very interesting, engaging discussion. For those of our members watching this during the week of the program, please remember to indicate your attendance from the bottom of the program page and leave a comment. Ask Cal a question. We'll ask him to come back and maybe address some of those. But thank you again for joining us for this week's program. As you know, every week we try to bring you engaging and interesting programs that are focused on education, entrepreneurship, and innovation. We hope you enjoyed hearing from our guest speaker, Cal Mann, today. And Cal, thank you so much for your service to both Rotary and the Peace Corps. And I'd like to hand it back to you for a final word.
Well, thank you again for inviting me to participate. And as that famous Uncle Sam poster says, I want you for the Rotary Peace Corps partnership. Join us. Make something good happen.
Thanks, Cal.